Hi, today I'll be sharing how three dimensions of the quality teaching model are used in my lesson one. For each dimension, I'll focus on one element and the strategies I used in my planning. I'll start with the dimension quality learning environment, and the element that I've chosen is engagement. I chose this element because it's very important to capture students' curiosity right at the start of the lesson and to create a safe space where everyone feels included and ready to learn. So when students feel connected to what they are learning, they are more willing to participate and show interest in tasks and activities. For this lesson, which focused on how rocks are valued and used in different cultures, I used two strategies to promote engagement. So one being brainstorming, and the second is dice-based questioning. Um, in the brainstorming, it was done through an activity called Make a List. So what the students were supposed to do was look at the cue on board, which was the word rock, and try to think of anything that connected to that word. After once they've written, they could be a nominee. So the one who is sharing could pick up who's the next person um, to share would be. So this kept everyone active and involved while also being a bit curious. So this was a good hook to the lesson. As students shared, the teacher also recorded their ideas on board. So this meant that every idea was valued and there was no right or wrong answers. So May 2017 stresses that importance of designing tasks that allow all students to contribute meaningfully, particularly in diverse classrooms. This activity helped in creating that space for the students. The second strategy that promotes engagement is dice-based questioning used in the rock and roll activity. Students were in groups and each student rolled a dice to decide which question they would answer about their culture. The dice added an element of fun and surprise, keeping students alert and curious. Because everyone got a turn, it made participation fair and inclusive. It also reduced the pressure on shy students since it was the dice choosing them and not the teacher who was imposing a question on them. Bar 2017 explains that young adolescents are more motivated when learning allows them to explore ideas, express themselves, and be curious rather than just memorizing information. In this activity, they interpret images and symbols in their own way, adding imagination, ownership to their learning process. Hence, both strategies used bring a sense of creativity and control to keep students focused and interested in the topic they'll be further decoding in the coming weeks, thus helping to build a quality learning environment. The next dimension I want to discuss is significance, and the element that I've chosen is cultural knowledge. I chose this element because it helps bridge science and culture, showing students that what they study in class connects to people's beliefs, traditions, and ways of seeing the world. When students notice these links, learning feels more meaningful and personal. In this part of the rock and roll activity, I used a strategy called grouping using cultural cards. Each student received a card that represented a culture, for example, First Nations, Indians, Greek, or Chinese, and they had to find their teammates which had the same cultural card. At this stage, the focus wasn't on deep discussion yet, but on building awareness of cultural diversity present in the classroom. Even the simple process of finding teammates led to a learning. For instance, if a student wasn't sure what their card represented, another peer from that culture or not could guide them. So this small interaction between them creates a moment of cultural learning. Students start to recognize and name different cultures, which builds respect and curiosity. Nussbaum, 2009, argues that real education should develop empathy and global understanding, preparing young people to see themselves as part of a shared humanity. This idea is especially important in the middle years because students at this age are forming their own identities and learning to understand others. It also supports both their social and emotional development um, of their learning, helping them become more open minded, respectful, and socially aware, qualities that are essential as they grow into adults. The next strategy used is called predict, compare, reflect. In this task, students worked with their cultural groups to write a short statement explaining what the cultural value of the rock would be. So if you could see here, these are the examples that were given to each culture group. So there were four in total, and they come up with their own statement of how the rocks were used based on their own biases. After sharing the first thoughts with the class, they were given an information sheet describing the actual uses of the rocks. Students then compare this with what they originally predicted and reflect on what they learned. This activity helps students to see that knowledge is culturally constructed, that different societies interpret the same material in unique way based on their beliefs and environments. Also, even though there are often crossovers between these cultures, which can be identified, it also encourages perspective talking, helping students to appreciate how our culture influences art, architecture, and science in diverse yet interconnected ways. Hutton and Sullivan in 2016 explained that culturally responsive teaching empowers students to view the world through multiple lenses and to recognize their own place within it. Also, Baher 2017 explains that adolescents are most engaged when they explore identity and meaning through reflection. So, by predicting, comparing, and reflecting, students develop empathy, curiosity, and appreciation of diversity. Together, these strategies turn a science lesson into more culturally connected and a significant learning experience. Coming to the final dimension of the QTM, which is intellectual quality, I have chosen to talk about the element higher order thinking. I chose this element because it encourages students to go beyond memorizing facts and instead think deeply, so to analyze, evaluate, and create, which is very important in science as it helps students not only remember information but also understand why and how things work. Bloom's taxonomy in 1956 described higher order thinking as the top levels of learning, where students move from remembering and understanding to analyzing, evaluating, and creating. I wanted students to experience that shift in this lesson to use their knowledge in new and meaningful ways. The first strategy for that I used was the strategy called guided inquiry and analysis. In this activity, students were given open-ended questions about their cultural images. These questions encourage students to think beyond surface level observation. They had to analyze, reason, and interpret the image, then work together to write a one-sentence summary that captured the cultural value of the rock in their context. Sometimes scaffolding was required, so in that case, the teacher models on how to create a one sentence summary. This process requires students to justify their thinking, consider other viewpoints, and create new insights. All key features of higher order cognition in the QTM framework. By guiding students to reason and reflect, the activity supported the development of critical and creative thinking, which is essential for middle years learners. The second strategy that supported higher order thinking was collaborative research, which was used in the consolidation and practice part of the lesson through an activity. So students worked in small groups and were given images of world structures that were made from 3 different types of rocks, so namely sedimentary, igneous, and metamorphic, but they are not introduced to that at this point. Each group researched the type of rock used, its scientific features, and its cultural or symbolic meaning, then prepared a short presentation to explain their findings. This time, unlike the previous activity, no prompts were provided. Students had to generate their own questions and guide their own process. Main in 2017 explains that adolescents are more motivated when learning is collaborative, challenging, and purposeful because these conditions help develop independence and confidence in their learning. Both of these strategies gave students the opportunity to apply, question, and create, aligning directly with the higher levels of Bloom's taxonomy. They moved from describing to interpreting and from knowing to understanding. This, both these activities truly contributed in students developing some higher order thinking in the lesson 1.